Welcome to the instructional video for week 4. Let's go over your learning objectives for this week. Your language and cognitive objectives are, again, closely related this week. In your language objective, we're going to categorize items. So this may be an activity that you're already doing with your preschooler that they may already be quite familiar with. Children love to sort things and categorize them into different groups. So if you're already doing this, that's fantastic. Keep up the good work. I'm going to offer you a few activity ideas to help you work this objective into your everyday life so that it doesn't have to be something that you take extra time out of your day for, but you can actually accomplish things while you're working on this. And I'm going to explain a little bit about how this becomes a language objective, because sorting is very much of a cognitive activity where your child is thinking about items and what characteristics they have and how are you going to divide them into different groups based on those characteristics. So it's very much a mental cognitive objective, but this is an important language objective as well, because as you're working on the task of sorting or categorizing, you should be talking to your child and engaging them in conversation about the items and about what they're doing and the process that they're involved in as they're doing it. And as you label the different items that they're sorting and the different characteristics of those items, you're expanding their vocabulary. And you're offering them a lot of new word choices and showing them how those apply to the different items. So I'll show you what I mean as we kind of talk about the activity ideas. The first one is sorting silverware. Children, it's a great way for them to help in the kitchen. They love to take the silverware when they're ready to be put away and sort the spoons and the forks. Sometimes there's different sizes of each, and that's another great layer of categorizing that you can offer: the small forks and the large ones, the small spoons and the large ones. And you can, as you're doing these activities, talk to them about those things. They're learning not just the vocabulary for the items that they're putting away, but they're also learning those descriptive words of small and large and medium and all of those size words that are so important for math skills later on. In the same vein, having them put away their toys and helping them with that. And again, this is something that they may need a little bit of assistance and guidance with. And at the same time, you're talking to them about what they're doing and you're naming things and labeling things to help your child increase that vocabulary. So this isn't like go to your room and put away your toys where they go and work on this by themselves. Really, to be a language activity, they need you there, they need you engaged and talking to them about the process. So you might say, we're going to put all the books on the bookshelf and the little light books are going to go on the top shelf and the big heavy books are going to go on this bottom shelf, and then we're going to put away the blocks, and we have a bin for small blocks and medium and large, and then we're going to put the stuffed animals in this bin. So as you're working with them, you're assessing this big pile of toys and your child's determining, okay, this is a book, it goes on the shelf, but it's pretty light, so it's going to go on this shelf. Or here's a block, but it's medium sized, so it's going to go in this bin. And so as you're working with them, you're engaging them in this conversation and giving them a real opportunity to use those language skills and to expand that vocabulary. Sorting laundry is another fantastic activity for this. You can sort the laundry, for instance, as you're getting ready to wash it by color, and you can work with them on color words. You can engage them on, you can have a light and a dark pile and, ask them, well, which do you think this piece of clothing goes in? And let them work that out. Once the laundry is clean, that's another fantastic sorting activity. You can have them sort the laundry by the type of laundry. And so, socks, pants, shirts, and be naming all of these articles. You can sort them by person, who they belong to in the family. It's fantastic work for their brain, and if you're there with them, engaged with them and talking to them about what you're doing, then it's a fantastic language skill as well. So similarly to this rolls directly into the cognitive objective, which is to categorize information. This is extremely similar to what we were just talking about, except here, once they're really, really familiar with categorizing items, you can kind of step it up a bit to categorizing information. This is extremely similar, but here you're going to start to look for opportunities for them to categorize things based on more abstract characteristics. So instead of the color of an item, which they can see, you're asking them to categorize something based on a piece of information that you can't necessarily see. For instance, you could have them sort the items, lay out some items on the table and have them sort the ones that are kitchen utensils from the household tools that need to be put away in the garage. So that's asking them to categorize something based on its intended use or its purpose, something that isn't as necessarily as readily apparent as asking them to sort by color or by size. The same with toys. You can ask them to sort by, what's something that we play with and something that's not meant to be played with, or what is an outdoor toy, something we play with in the sandbox versus something you would play with in your room. That's another great way to have them categorize information. What is something that we would eat for a snack and something that we would not eat? So all of those are fantastic ways to really get them thinking about the items, thinking in a little bit more abstract way, and getting them to sort items into groups based on their intended purpose. So try the language activities first as far as categorizing items, and then if you feel like that's getting a little old or boring, or that your child has just mastered that, then you can move on to the cognitive objective of categorizing information. Another great one is if your child has a wide selection of toy animals, for instance, and they're familiar with which ones are like prey animals and predator animals. That's another great abstract sorting activity. Have them sort into piles based upon that. Or have them sort into piles based on which are sea animals and which are land animals. You can even step it up a notch into having 3 different groups, depending on how many animals you have at home. Step it up into 3 different groups where you might have animals that live on land and in water, and then a 3rd group that shares the characteristics. Like that group of animals may live either in land or water or both. Or similarly might be a prey and a predator animal. So that's another way to increase the difficulty a little bit if you feel like your child is ready for that. Any sorting activities that you do, whether it's just based on sorting Legos by color, all the way up to these more advanced skills, it's fantastic, both language and cognitive practice for your little one. So moving on to the literacy objective for this week, we're to the letter D. And this is a pretty simple letter. We're going to work on learning the uppercase and lowercase, learning to recognize it when you see it written, but also the sound of D, which the letter D is a consonant and only makes one sound, that d, like in dog sound. So that's a very simple one. It's always going to make that sound no matter what word you see it in, so that's great. Now that your child has already worked on the letter B, an important thing to note is that it's very common for children to confuse the lowercase b with the D, since they are identical, just in facing in opposite directions. And so don't worry if your child mixes up these letters. It is extraordinarily common for them to do so, and to potentially do so for a long time to come. You just want to give them lots of practice with identifying which one is which. And just if they make the wrong choice, just offer them the correct answer as to which one it is. Is it a B or a D? And they'll really learn it over time through repetition, and it may take a lot of repetition. That's a confusing one. One of the ways, there's a lot of little tricks that you can use to help children learn which one is a B and which one is a D. Those tricks are usually for slightly older children than the preschool years, but you may want to try 1 or 2 of them. The one that I love most for little kids is once they've thoroughly mastered the capital B and the capital D, knowing how to recognize those, then you can offer them the suggestion that, when you're looking at the lowercase letters, if you add the extras, so picture you're looking at a lowercase b, and if you add that extra little loop on the top, it's going to turn it into a capital B. Of course, that doesn't work with the lowercase d, because then it's backwards. So you can show them that how by adding that extra loop on top, they're going to turn a lowercase b into a capital B. So this only works if your child has thoroughly mastered what a capital B looks like. That is one thing that you can offer to them to help if your child is struggling with remembering which one is which. And then they can mentally kind of put that little loop on the top and say, does that make a capital B? If so, it's a lowercase b. And if it doesn't, then it's a lowercase d. And that is one way that you can help them to remember which one is which. But don't worry if they confuse it. That is incredibly common, and it can take quite a while. Just over time and over looking at them again and again and again, they'll usually eventually get which one that is. Going on to our math objectives, we're continuing to work on counting objects to 20 and identifying written numbers to 10. So just follow the activities that are suggested, and continue to look for new and different ways to work that into your schedule, new things to count. Again, that's so important to, one-to-one correspondence, is that you're counting different types of objects. So look for opportunities to count different things while you're out and about. And again, if your child has thoroughly mastered this, feel free to go on to higher numbers with that as well, so that it doesn't get, too boring or too monotonous. But there's no need to do anything if you're still working on that, still working on those teens numbers and counting in the teens, which can be tricky. Then feel free to just keep it to this and continue to really get this down, because it's a solid foundational math skill that they'll really need going forward in kindergarten. Another math objective for this week is recognizing simple repeating patterns. And I'm going to show you in a second, when I talk to you a little bit about the fine motor objectives for this week, how you can incorporate those together. A lot of the fine motor activities are really conducive to working on simple repeating patterns. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. But as we transition to talking about the fine motor skills, we're going to incorporate a new one this week, which is the open thumb web space, which is the ability to rotate the thumb to the necessary position for the tip of the thumb and index finger to touch in opposition. So this is, it's if you have a flat palm and you rotate your thumb around so that you can bring your fingertips together, it's that motion. And that motion is critical to a child being able to properly hold a pencil or pen or a crayon or a marker. So we're going to work on some activities that really develop that skill. So we're going to choose an activity to work on that. That's the new one for this week, as well as incorporating some other activities that we've already worked on. A precision activity, a finger isolation activity where you're isolating movement in just one finger at a time, and a wrist extension and stability activity that works on strengthening that wrist and hand, for, again, all of this in preparation for them to be able to write with ease and have a little bit of writing stamina when they get to the point where they're called upon to do that. So I encourage you to choose for these fine motor skills you really mix it up. This is why we don't assign you activities for fine motor skills for the week, so that you can pick the activities that work best for you and your child. So I encourage you to mix it up, try different ones. If your child has a particularly favorite one, then feel free to stick with that and go back to that, as long as you're mixing a variety of activities to work on these 4 different areas, so that you're not just doing, it's like going to the gym and only doing bicep curls. You don't want to do that. You want to work on a variety of muscles. So choose your activities to, spread across these objectives and to work on a variety of objectives. But within that objective, feel free to either stick with favorite activities or mix it up and choose different ones, as long as you're working on a variety of different objectives throughout the course of the week. And as I said before, many of these activities, if you look at them, you can also try to pick ones that accomplish other objectives too. And this is where the math objectives come in. There are so many fine motor activities that are also fantastic for working on math skills, especially this week's math objective of simple repeating patterns. So for instance, for the precision activity, if you're going to string beads onto a pipe cleaner, you can choose to make a simple repeating pattern as you do so. Choose 2 color beads like red and blue, and help your child make a simple repeating pattern of red, blue, as you're stringing them onto the pipe cleaner. And then when you're done and you've filled up your pipe cleaner, you can count how many beads you've strung on there, and then that's also working on your counting objective at the same time. Another great one is the stacking popsicle sticks. If you have popsicle sticks that are different colors, or you can take a marker and quickly make them a couple of different colors, you can alternate the colors to work on a simple repeating pattern. And then same thing when you're done, you see how high you can stack the popsicle sticks, and when you've reached the most that you can stack, you can count how many you were able to stack, and then that's working on your counting objective at the same time. So if you, as you're picking out your activities for the week and what you want to do, you can look for those little ways that you can combine objectives and work on multiple ones at the same time. It will save you time, and also I think increase the fun of the activity when you're kind of doing different things at once. Okay, so after the fine motor skills, we go on to social and emotional learning. And this week we have 2 objectives in the area of self-management, which is with support, begins to regulate impulses, and social awareness, which is demonstrates awareness of others' expressions of feelings, both verbal and nonverbal. So you've already laid the groundwork for these objectives a little bit, you know, with your sensory bottle that you made, and with all of the discussion and the vocabulary that you've had about feelings, you know, how to identify your own feelings and also how to recognize those feelings in other people. That's really laid the foundation to be able to complete the activities for these objectives and talk to your child about them. The sensory bottle will give you a great tool to work on the first one, which is beginning to regulate impulses, where, you know, they might begin to recognize when they feel stressed or frustrated or worked up, and where they need to take a little time out with their sensory bottle and calm down. So don't forget you have that, and to use that as a tool this week in accomplishing that objective. And then finally, we go on to our project of this week, which is growing seeds. This is a great project for science skills. If you've decided to start, you know, a nature journal with your child, then this is a great thing to do to, you know, continue to work on filling up that journal and record the things that you're doing in it. We start with a coloring page of a seed to show them how a seed is almost comparable to a chicken egg, how it has a little baby plant in there, and you're really going to just start with a little science lesson and talking to them about what's going to happen in the seed that they're going to plant and how they're going to see it grow. And then you go through the process of actually germinating the seed and watching the little shoot come out with the little leaves and the root, and they get to see that in action. It's like magic. And so again, your nature journal is a great place for you to record this. This can be an activity that's as simple as just your Friday activity, where you're going to complete the coloring page and the discussion and plant the seed, and then, you know, a couple of days later they'll get to see that growth in it. Or you can take it further and you can then actually plant the seed in soil and watch it grow, and you can continue to use it as a science activity where your child is maybe measuring how high their seedling is growing and recording, you know, help them record those measurements in their science journal, or maybe they draw a picture of their seedling once it's grown. So you can take this activity, you know, as far as you want to. It can either be just for the day on Friday for your fun activity and project, or you can continue to use it going forward. Whatever works for you. I hope you have fun with it, and we'll see you back next week for more.